Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here, and thank you for your patience. This morning, I updated the Toronto Police Service Board on several challenges our city is facing. It has been 163 days since the Middle East crisis began, and the impact on our city is significant. Officers have made 24 protest-related arrests and laid 30 charges since October 7th in response to threats, assaults, and mischief. Investigations continue, and charges may still be laid as investigators review evidence after some of these events. Policing public demonstrations in a free and democratic society is complex. We are seeing a change in behavior and tactics at demonstrations. We will not allow critical infrastructure to be closed by demonstrators. We will enforce the law and maintain the delicate balance between public safety and freedom of expression and the right to assembly. Project Resolute continues to be a large-scale operation that involves engagement with the Jewish and Muslim communities, additional patrols, command posts, and increased presence around places of worship. This morning, I reported to the board that since October 7th, hate crime is up 93% over the same period last year. Since October 7th, we have attended 989 hate crime calls for service, and there have been 203 hate crime occurrences. We are attending, on average, 157 hate crime calls a month. Of the 84 hate crimes so far in 2024, 56% are anti-Semitic. While underreporting of all forms of hate is a concern, I know from talking to people in the community that Islamophobia is a significant concern, and given our statistics, I am concerned about significant underreporting. Since October 7, 2023, there have been 69 arrests and 173 charges related to hate crime occurrences, including mischief, assault, and uttering threats. We continue to see hate-related graffiti with 342 occurrences since October 7th. I also spoke to the board about auto thefts and carjackings. Last year, more than 12,000 vehicles were stolen in Toronto. That's 34 vehicles every day. That's one every 40 minutes. We have seen a rise in carjackings and break-and-enters for car keys. We know this is a concern for our communities, and we are continuing to take action. We are collating the Provincial Carjacking Task Force with the Ontario Provincial Police. They are doing exceptional work. As of yesterday, the task force has arrested 121 suspects, laid 730 charges, and recovered 157 stolen vehicles. We are putting a significant amount of resources forward to address this citywide. Before I take your questions, I want to acknowledge that today is the first day of the trial in the death of Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrop. I had the opportunity to see the Northrop family this past Friday. And while this case is before the courts, and I can't comment further, I do want the Northrop family to know that the thoughts of the members of the Toronto Police Service remain with them now and always. I also offer the commend, support, and acknowledgement for our members, both sworn and civilian, in the Toronto Police family, who remain devastated by the tragic and sudden loss of their friend and colleague. Now I'll take any questions you may have.
Chief, when you talk about underreporting, and one concern for you is that you feel that incidents of Islamophobia are significantly underreported. You say that you're talking to people in these communities. What are you hearing from them, and why do you think these incidents are going so underreported?
So thank you for that question. It really is an important thing for us to highlight, underreporting, and you've heard me speak of it many, many times in the context of hate crimes. But when I travel throughout the city, I definitely ask and listen for answers regarding how people feel, and particularly as it relates to hate. And in my engagement with the Muslim community, I can tell you that repeatedly, time and again, there are discussions around experiences concerning hate. I visited an Islamic center not long ago, and I was really struck by a young high school student, a girl who described her experiences when she rides public transit. And these are the kinds of things we are frankly not getting reports of. And our numbers year to date, I believe we've had 5 reports this year, which is really not in alignment with what I'm hearing from our community on the ground. We have, as a result of that, we've changed our posture. We've added an additional Muslim liaison officer. We are now present in mosques on a regular basis, have been since October 7th, but on Friday and Saturdays throughout Ramadan, we are moving a command post around the city to visit with our communities at mosques. And we continue to engage with our communities wherever we can. I recently met with a number of imams, and after Ramadan, we are coming together to discuss a more strategic engagement at the grassroots level, at our police stations, at mosques, in the community, in an effort to ensure people understand how to report, what we're really interested in making sure we understand and have a pulse on, and have an opportunity, frankly, to disrupt and hold people accountable who are committing these horrible crimes. And we'll continue in that regard. And we're also going to be exploring technological access to us. We know there's many young people impacted. As I described that one incident, the one thing that resonated is young people, as they go about the city, have experiences that warrant reporting, and we'll find a way to get access to us to report those incidences in a more effective way.
Why do you think it is that people are not willing to come forward and report these incidents?
Well, listen, hate crimes underreporting is something I've spoken of many, many times in my career, standing at this podium, whether as chief or before. And there's a number of reasons why people don't report hate. It's sometimes there's a sense of helplessness. Sometimes there's a concern about what's going to happen, how it'll get handled. And I think what I really want Torontonians to know is I'm joined here by the Superintendent from Intelligence Services for a reason. And that's because that unit is leading our hate crime efforts. We've bolstered that hate crime unit to over 30 committed investigators who are working tirelessly to pursue every opportunity and every bit of evidence we can to hold those responsible accountable. And I tell you, it goes beyond the enforcement. It is important to have the community have the trust and confidence to come forward with these incidences, and for us to be able to engage with the community in a way that will help hopefully return a sense of safety and security and help prevent these offenses.
Sean O'Shea with Global News up here. How much of this hate issue can be dealt with through legislation and enforcement? And I wanted to ask you about that because in Vaughan, the mayor is proposing a bylaw that would limit the protest to more than 100 meters away from places like hospitals, institutions. My first question, and then do you think that would be of assistance in trying to deal with the issues in the city of Toronto?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Listen, I look forward to reading the details of how that bylaw unfolds to see what opportunities it provides. But I think any level of government, in fact, I'll say it differently, every level of government has a role to play in doing what can be done to prevent hate. And any opportunity, whether legislative or otherwise, to create awareness and to stop this kind of behavior is welcomed by the police. And I think there are a number of things that can be considered over time, so we'll see how it unfolds in Vaughan. And I look forward to discussions that we're going to have with different levels of government and continue to have in this regard.
And a follow-up to that, please, and that is that there are a lot of people in the city who don't believe the police are being tough enough on people that protest and that take protests too far, that there should be more arrests, and there should be more charges laid. How do you address that?
Well, I think, I think it's important to see this in the total context of what we're dealing with. This is an unprecedented time. Since October 7th, we've faced over 500 planned and unplanned demonstrations. We have many a day, sometimes up to a dozen a day that we are managing. And other than a number of incidences that garnered certainly some media attention, we have facilitated assemblies where charter-protected activities took place. We have made arrests. We continue to make arrests. We continue to investigate. And as the demonstrations change and the behavior of demonstrators change, we pivot and adjust. And we've done that recently again, and we'll continue to do that and iterate our response to be responsive to what's before us, to do everything we can to keep our city safe.
But Chief, about that change in behaviors of the demonstrators, can you elaborate what is changing? What new things are you seeing, and how exactly are you adapting? What are you changing in your approach?
Well, I'll give you an example. We've seen cars used in protests, which is something we haven't seen before. We took steps to address that through our investigations. We've seen behavior on the ground change. There's been a little bit more aggressive behavior at times towards our officers while standing on the line and doing what they can to control circumstances. We've had people engage in disruptive behavior for sure. And also the speed and flow of protests is changing. We've had pop-up events and very rapidly developing events happen recently that required us to pivot our response to make sure that our response can also be rapid and effective in the changing dynamics.
We spoke to some Palestinian demonstrators who feel that the response of the police has escalated. They feel unjustly vilified acts sometimes. They don't feel safe at protests. What would you say to them?
I say to them that we'll facilitate lawful, peaceful assembly as we always have. We'll continue to do that. I'd ask people to do their expression in a peaceful, lawful way that is respectful of everyone.
Chief, the news about the carjackings comes at a time where the service is receiving some backlash after a constable advised residents to leave their car key fobs at their front door to avoid a violent home invasion during a car theft. What's your response to that backlash?
Well, listen, we're certainly aware of the backlash. That's something that happened in the context of a community meeting many weeks ago now. And I think the service has been very clear. We have a number of crime prevention tips that we provide. We've published them quite broadly. And there are things for residents to consider in how to protect themselves from this type of criminality. And again, important for me to stress that we continue our efforts to not only disrupt, but actually arrest, apprehend, and hold people accountable who are committing these types of crimes, and we're doing so on a very significant scale.
So Chief, should people be leaving their keys by the door? Just like, what is your take on that advice that was given? Is that something people should be doing?
I think the service has been very clear. There's a number of crime prevention things that people can consider. And again, I draw your attention to our website. Use, good thinking around your own environment. Cutting hedges back, making sure the lighting is good, parking your car in your garage, etc. There are a number of things for residents to consider to prevent this type of activity.
Chief, the stats also show that carjackings are way up this year, more than 100%. So while you can do things to protect your car while it's a driveway or parked or whatever, how much of a concern is it that these people who are doing these things are becoming much more bold, much more brazen, and putting people's actual physical safety in harm's way?
Well, there is a concern, of course. We've been expressing our concern around the escalation of activities for sure. And we are addressing that by putting our investigative efforts where they're needed the most, which is to address the violent activity that we see happening.
Can you talk a little bit about the ALPR readers? Can you just expand in terms of, are these in the cars right now? How exactly do they operate? How fast will they detect cars?
It's being rolled out, so I can't say that it's citywide at this moment, but it is being rolled out. It is an additional tool in our toolkit to allow us to be able to capture stolen vehicles through our in-car camera system. And that's going to be a very, very significant impact over time. Our ability to actually detect stolen cars in our presence when our police cars are driving around the city. And, our police cars drive somewhere around 30 million kilometers a year. So we cover a lot of roadway, and we spend a lot of time driving, and that's going to be an important part of our set of equipment we have available to deal with this.
Chief, are you seeing a lot of repeat offenders when it comes to those being arrested for car thefts? I know that a lot of them are younger people who are pulling off, who are, doing the carjackings and home invasions. Are they going to jail, getting out based on their age? Are you seeing a lot of repeat offenders?
I'll call up the inspector who's responsible for that area.
Thanks, Chief. Good afternoon, everyone. In regards to repeat offenders, I don't have the number specifically in regards to how many young offenders. I can tell you a significant number of those 170 that have been arrested are young offenders. Again, I can tell you the Toronto Police and the joint forces that are part of this provincial carjacking task force are committed to disrupt and dismantle these groups, and saying that it is a multi-pronged approach with other levels, and we'll leave it at government, that we all need to get on board and address these young individuals that are participating.
Chief, I had a question to follow up from you were talking about in the meeting upstairs about further training for pursuing hate-motivated behavior. Can you elaborate on that? You said today and tomorrow there was training.
You know, our hate crime investigators are engaging in training at the Ontario Police College, but I'll also share with you that we have developed training internally for our members around issues around Judaism and Islam to create a greater cultural competency around recognizing the impacts of hate and the impacts of events that are happening in our city so that our response can be effective given the circumstances we're facing. And that's training that's being made available for all our members across the service.
Chief, if I could just ask you quickly about, you talked a bit about shootings as well in your opening remarks there, and the fact that there have been some shootings recently that have you concerned. And you mentioned that you're concerned about what this could mean for the summer. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on what you meant by that.
Sure, absolutely, and thank you for that. You know, every year as we head into the spring and summer, as I go about the community, we hear the concerns around how safe will the summer be, given that summer tends to bring people out and about much more. In communities that experience gun violence, certainly recognize that the summer can be a busy time in their communities. And, you know, that is something that I hear time and time again, quite frankly, each and every year. So as we take a look at things that are happening and pivot our response, we're really mindful that we are heading into what we know can be a busy time and certainly a time of concern in our community. So we want to be responsive to the community concerns.
I want to go back to the license plate readers. How does the service plan to deal with license plate covers? Will you be ticketing drivers for those?
Well, quite frankly, I don't know how the technology deals with that. So there are certainly Highway Traffic Act offenses available for us to consider if the license plate covers are such that are unlawful by the Highway Traffic Act. And, you know, the expectation would be our members would do enforcement when appropriate.
Quick follow-up about the mobile command post. Can you clarify, was there one at Bathurst and Shepherd that's moved, and which ones are still in the Bathurst corridors?
So we continue to have one at the Bathurst corridor, south of Shepherd, at the school, and we continue to maintain one there. We did move, scaled down the Bathurst Shepherd one to a vehicle for a period of time, and now again looking at the response from our community and the community needs. We took our command post, we moved it over to 31 Division, to Jane and Driftwood area in response to activities that were transpiring there. But we continue our whole of service response that we've dubbed Project Resolute, and that response continues. The command post was one element which we maintain, but we continue to visit schools, places of worship, and community centers and the like on a very regular, consistent basis.
Chief, just one last quick question. You mentioned in your remarks upstairs, you mentioned a few times that I know people sometimes want tougher policing on the protests and stuff, but you made it very clear that you want to uphold people's charter rights, assembly, protest, free speech. Just wanted to know from your perspective why you feel it's important to re-emphasize that police are here to protect and not kind of get involved and take a side here.
I think it's a discussion that involves in many places I go. And in some cases, people want to see more enforcement. In other cases, and we heard questions today, there's a different perspective. It's important to recognize our role and the role we play in a democratic society, and our role is to maintain peace and to protect charter rights. So I think, you know, when these topics do come up, it's important for me as the chief to let people know that we will preserve people's charter rights, but we're going to enforce the law. We are taking action when crimes occur, when criminal acts happen. We have conducted enforcement, and we will continue to conduct enforcement when it's appropriate to do so.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you everyone for coming.